Hello guys, everyone. Welcome to another class of power sharing chapter. Okay, in the previous class we discussed about what do you mean by power sharing? Yes, what do you mean by power sharing? The power can be distributed or sharing of a power among the three major organs of the government such as legislature, executive, and judiciary. Yes, and it is the most important for what? For proper functioning of a democracy. Yes, and how the democracy handles the demands of power sharing. We discussed forms of power sharing in Belgium and Sri Lanka. Yes, so Belgium is a federal state in a Western Europe, and it is a smaller in a area than the state of which state? Haryana. Yes, and it shares its boundaries with the four countries. One is the Netherlands, France, Germany, and Luxembourg. Yes, and Belgium has a population of about 1 crore. Yes, 1 crore, and out of the total population of the country, 59% people live in a where? Flemish region and they speak Dutch language, and 40% of the people live in a Wallonia region and they speak French language, and remaining 1% of the people German speakers. Yes, and finally the minority French speaking community yes become majority in a capital city, and whereas the Dutch speaking community become majority in a country. Yes, so this is what the difference. And accommodation in Belgium, we discussed that the Belgian leaders took a different way or a path by recognizing regional differences and cultural diversity of a countries. Yes, and the period between 1970 and 1993, the Belgium constitution was amended how many times? Four times it was amended. Yes, and they brought many changes in the constitution, and we discussed in the earlier class, means in the previous class. And those points, first is the constitution prescribed that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. Yes, and second, some special laws are required for the support for majority members of the linguistic group or each linguistic group. Third, the state is not subordinate to the central government because more of the central government power is given to the state government. Yes, between two regions of the country, one is the Flemish region and second is the Wallonia region. And Brussels has a separate government in which, yes, Dutch and French speaking, Dutch and French equal representation. Yes, and the most important apart from the central government and state government, third kind of a government, that is community government, and it is being elected by the whom? Elected by the peoples and belongs to one community, either Dutch speaking community, French speaking community, or German speaking community. Then next we discussed about the Sri Lanka. Yes, Sri Lanka is a small island nation and it is just few kilometers away from the southern coast of Tamil Nadu, what we discussed in the previous class. And Sri Lanka has a diverse population about 2 crores people with a 74% of Sinhalas and 18% of Tamilians. And later this Tamil divided into two subgroups. One is a Sri Lankan Tamilians and second is a Indian Tamilians. Yes. So the Tamil natives of Sri Lanka are called Sri Lankan Tamilians and they constitute about 13% of our population in the northeastern part of Sri Lanka. Yes. And Indian Tamilians whose forefathers came from India as a plantation worker during the colonial rule. Yes, and later they settled down their life in Sri Lanka itself, not in Sri Lanka, and they constituted about the 5% of the population. Yes, and we discussed about the main point of this chapter, majoritarianism. Yes, what do you mean by majoritarianism? Majoritarianism is a concept which signifies a belief that majority community should be able to rule the country according to their wish or in whatever way they want by disregarding the wishes and of the minorities or needs of the common people. Yes, and Sri Lanka emerged as an independent nation in 1948, and in 1956 an act was passed recognizing Sinhala as a official language. Yes, so these are the what we discussed in the earlier class, and later the Tamilians also began to launched many political parties and struggles for recognition of Tamil as an official language. But their demand was continuously or repeatedly denied by the government. So that reason by the 1980, yes, by the 1980, political parties like LTTE, yes, LTTE, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam was formed and demanded a separate Tamil Eelam state. When the government continuously, yes, denied it, yes, continuously denied it, which turned into a civil war. Yes, which turned into an what? Turned into a civil war. Okay, today we are going to discuss the next part of this chapter, that is needs of power sharing. Yes, okay. See, student, here there are two set of reasons. Two set of reasons. One is a prudential reason. One is a prudential reason. Yes, one is a prudential reason and second is a moral reason. Yes. Okay. Then the question arises that what is the difference between this prudential reason and moral reason? Okay. The first point as follows. Yes. The prudential set of reason. Yes. So here prudential reason. Yes. Prudential reason is are prudential reason are based on yes, prudential reason are based on careful calculation of gains and loss. Yes, prudential reason are based on a careful calculation of gains and yes, and see in the same way moral reason. See the moral reasons. Yes, moral reason is purely is based on not purely moral reason is based on based on moral consideration. Yes, the moral reason is based on moral considerations. Yes, so this is what the first difference. The second reason is prudential reason are based on a careful calculation of gains and losses, and the moral reason is based on moral consideration. And what is the second reason? Yes, okay. Second reason is most important. That yes, prudential reason, prudential reason. Second reason, the most important, prudential reason help us to reduce help the possibility of prudential reason help us to reduce the possibility of conflict conflict between social groups. Yes, see, the prudential reason help us to reduce the possibility of a conflict between the social groups. Then, what is the second reason in the moral reason or difference? Okay, so this is prudential reason help us to reduce the possibility of a conflict between social groups, and here moral reasons. Moral reason is a it is implied there. Moral reason is a basic spirit of democracy. Yes, moral reason is a basic spirit of democracy. Means here democracy play an important role. So this is what the second reason. Yes, third reason. Third reason. Yes, third reason. Prudential reason is third reason. Reservation. Yes, reservation in reservation in constituencies. Yes, reservation in constituencies. Constitutions or constituencies is reservation in constitution or constituencies for is reservation in constitution, sorry, not constitution for minorities. Yes, minorities and women. Minorities and women. The reservation in constitution for minorities and women is good example for good example. Yes, good example for P reason means prudential reason. Prudential reason. And here, third is the most important decentralization of power in India. Yes, decentralization of power in India is a good example for moral reason. So this is what the difference between prudential reason, moral reason, a set of reasons. Yes, which is required in a power sharing or needs of power sharing. Okay, then next we will go for forms of power sharing. Next is forms of power sharing. Forms of power sharing. Yes. Okay. So here in a democracy, as we discussed in the ninth standard, yes, in a democracy, people play an important role. Yes. So that see in a democracy, the source of energy or the source of people is a political power. So without people, we cannot get to see any kind of a government or even a democracy form of a government. Yes, so that in a democracy, people are the main source of a political power. And in the modern democracies, power sharing. Yes, in a modern democracies, power sharing can take place in a many forms. Yes, such as first, yes, horizontal distribution of power. Yes, what is the first? Horizontal distribution of power. First point. So here, power is shared among the different organs of the government. Power is shared among the different organs of the government, such as legislature, yes, such as legislature, executive, and third is judiciary. Yes, power is shared among the different organs of the government, such as legislature, executive, and judiciary. And judiciary, this is called what? This is called horizontal distribution of power. And because this allows a different organs of the government, it allows a different organs of the government to place at the same level, to place it about same level and exercise a different powers. Because see, legislature exercise a different powers, executive exercise a different powers, and judiciary exercise a different powers. For example, here each organs check each other. Yes. For example, judges. Yes. For example, judges are appointed by the executive. Judges are appointed by the executives, but they can check the functioning of executives or laws. But they can check the Functions of executives are laws made by the legislature. Made by the whom? Made by the legislature. And this system of arrangement, is called an what? Is called an checks and balances method. This system is called as a what? Checks and balances. Yes. So this is what the first horizontal distribution of power. And second, federal government and vertical division of power. Yes. Second is federal government and vertical division of power. Okay. So here power can be shared. Yes, power can be shared among different levels of the government. Yes, different levels of the government. And India has a three levels of the government. Yes, so one is a central government, second is a state, and third is a local government. Yes, local government. Okay, see here, power can be shared. Yes, power can be shared among the different levels of the government. Okay, see here, a general government for the entire country. Yes, a general government for the entire country. Usually we called it as a what? Usually we called it as a federal government. Usually we call it as a what? We call it as a federal government. Yes. But in India, we used to call it as a, yes, in India, we used to call it as a what? We used to call it as a central government or union government. Central government or union government. And say, this system is not followed in all the countries. Yes, where we get to see a federal form of a government only can follow this system of government, or this is followed in other countries. Yes, and the most important is here, the constitution clearly lays down, the constitution is clearly lays down the power of the government. Yes, the power of the government. The power of the government can be shared among the different organs of the government, and this is called an what? Vertical division of power. Vertical division of power, and this is found in Belgium but not in Sri Lanka. This is found in Belgium but not in Sri Lanka, and even it is also known as a federal form of a government or vertical division of a power. Yes. So second point. Third point is community government. Yes, third is a community government. First is a horizontal distribution of power. Second is federal government and vertical division of power. Third is community government. Okay. So here power can be shared. Yes, power can be shared different levels of the social groups. Yes, power can be shared. Power can be shared among the different social groups such as religious group or linguistic groups. Yes, and community government in Belgium is a good example for this community form of a government, because there were a controversy between Dutch and French-speaking community in a earlier or initial, but later it's been solved. Yes, because the leaders of Belgium, they took a different path by recognizing existence of cultural diversity of the country. Yes, so community government. And next, fourth is coalition government. Yes, fourth is coalition government. See, in a democracy, yes, in a democracy, power can be shared among the different political parties, and that represents the different ideologies and social groups of the political parties. Okay, for example, in the election, yes, if any political party fails to get a majority to form a government, then the political party, means more than two political party, can join their hands together with the other political parties to form a government. And here the power can be shared among the political parties. Two or more than political parties can join their hands and form the government. And nowadays we can get to see such kind of a government in India. Yes, which form of government? Coalition form of government. The next, different interest group. Different interest groups. Yes, and see the most important is here in a democracy we can get to see a different form of interest groups such as traders group, businessmen groups, yes, traders group, businessmen group, then industrialist group, farmers groups, and industrial workers groups, which we can get to see in a democracy. And they have a rights. Who? The interests group. Yes, they have a right in the committees. Yes, they have a right in the committees which is formed by the government, and even they have a right of decision making through the interest groups. Yes, so this is what the different interest groups. Yes, so forms of power sharing, there are five forms of power sharing. One is a horizontal. Yes, horizontal distribution of power. Horizontal distribution of power. Second is federal. Yes, federal government. And vertical division of power. Division of power. Yes, third is community government. Community government. Fourth is coalition government. Government. And fifth is different interest groups. Yes. So these are the major forms of power sharing. Yes. If they ask a question in the board examination, what are the major forms of power sharing? Then you have to mention all these forms of power sharing, and then you have to explain it one by one. Yes. So first we discussed the difference between prudential and moral set of reasons, and these are the forms of power sharing. So what is the difference? They may ask you a question, what is the difference between prudential and moral reasons in the needs of power sharing? Then you have to write those 6 points. Which are those 6 points? The first point is in prudential reason is prudential reason are based on the what? Based on the careful calculation of gains and losses. And moral reason is based on moral considerations. Second, prudential reason help us to reduce the possibility of a conflict between the social groups, and moral reasons, yes, they are the spirit of a democracy. And third, the most important is that reservation in the constituencies or constitution. Yes, reservation in the constituencies for minorities and women is a good example for the prudential reason. And here, moral reason, decentralization of power in India is a good example for what? Is a good example for moral reasons. Yes, the next forms of power sharing, first is a horizontal distribution of power. Yes, here power can be shared among the three major organs of the government: legislature, executive, and judiciary. Yes, legislature, executive, and judiciary, because it allows, yes, because it allows different powers of the government or different organs of the government placed at the same level and exercise a different power. Yes, and next, federal government and vertical division of power. Here, power can be shared among different levels of the government. A general government for the entire country is usually called as a what? Called as a federal government. But in India, we used to refer it as a what? Central government or union government. Yes, and India have a three levels of a government. One is a central government, second is a state government, and third is a local government. Is the next Community government, here power can be shared among the different social groups. Yes, among the different social groups such as religious and linguistic groups. And Belgium is a good example for the form of community government. Yes, and coalition democracy, power can be shared among the different political parties. Yes or no? Different political parties, and that represents what? Different ideologies and different social groups. Yes, and nowadays we can get to see only coalition form of a government. If any one political party fails to get a majority to form a government, then more than two, yes, political parties can join their hands together and form a government. Yes, or political parties can join their hands to other political party to form a government is called the coalition government. And different interest groups. Yes, so here power can be shared among the different interest groups such as traders, businessmen, industrialists, farmers, and industrialist workers. And they have a what? They have a right to share or right to take part in the committees and take a decision makings, or they can take part in a decision making. So these are the forms of power sharing. Yes, so the chapter is finished, and we will go for the next chapter in the next class. Okay, thank you.